Hey girls, so we just finished up chapter 17. We're moving on to chapter 18. You'll have a quiz on chapter 17 that's going to be due on Wednesday. That'll just be on like the remainder of the sections that we didn't quiz on yet. So I believe it's going to be 3, 4, and 5. So chapter 18 is America Claims an Empire. We are going to be looking at what events and individuals kind of moved the United States into this role as, becoming a world power. We're going to be looking at just kind of how the U.S. transforms into a world power and the impact that this change has on the United States. Section 1 looks at imperialism in America. So beginning in 1867 throughout the century, global competition causes the United States to expand, right? So we're going to be looking at the acquisition of, Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico, things of that nature. So this matters because during this period, the United States acquired Hawaii and Alaska. They become states in 1959. And we're going to be kind of looking at how this all progresses. Today, we're going to be looking at imperialism and the Spanish-American War. So we're only going to be doing sections 1 and 2 today. So let's get started. So Alaska is purchased. Well, what you should know first is that imperialism itself is the policy where stronger nations extend their economic, political, or military control over weaker territories. This was a trend around the world already. However, the United States began practicing imperialism with the purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867. So we are going to see that with imperialism in general, there are three main reasons that Americans decided to embark on this imperialistic journey with this mindset. And these three reasons were the desire for military strength, the thirst for new markets, right? New markets for trade, and the belief in cultural superiority. The United States believed that it was their manifest destiny, right, to move and conquer new peoples and show them the way. They believed that other cultures that were not westernized the way that they were, they believed that other cultures were inferior to them. And they thought, or they believed that it was their duty to reform and to civilize, quote unquote, civilize these nations because they believed that their culture was the superior culture. So the first land acquisition was Alaska. All right, so we're going to look at that first. William Seward was the Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson. And in 1867, he arranged for the U.S. to buy Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. It was hard for him to persuade the House of Representatives because people thought it was silly to buy that land. They thought, why would we want this ice box? There's no point in acquiring this land. But really, the geographical value of it was invaluable. So many people coined this purchase as Stewart's Folly. However, it provided a pathway to Asian markets. This bridges the gap between manifest destiny and imperialism, right? Where we're moving and acquiring new territory. So this was the first territorial acquisition that was not already attached to the United States physical border, their territory. Nicknames for Alaska. I'm not even in the main view. Hold on. Okay. Nicknames for Alaska include Stewart's Folly, Stewart's Icebox, Frigidia, Walrussia, and Stewart's Polar Bear Garden. So, and this turns out to be a great purchase because the United States bought it for 2 cents an acre, and they acquired land that was rich in timber, minerals, and oil. Right? After exploring the land, they surveyed the land and realized that it was actually very, very valuable. Hawaii. So in the 1870s, the U.S. business owners had control over most of Hawaii. What happened was in Hawaii, the United States established Pearl Harbor, which is a naval base at Hawaii's best port. Hawaii was a monarchy, meaning it was ruled by a king or queen. In this instance, it was ruled by Queen. Now I'm going to butcher her name, but it was Queen Liliuokalani, and she came to power and was overthrown by a government led by a man by Sanford B. Dole. So the United States put Sanford B. Dole in charge of Hawaii after they overthrew Queen Liliuokalani. Literally can't say that. But in 1898, Hawaii is annexed by the United States. So why is the U.S. acquiring new territory? We talked about this a little bit. European powers are colonizing Africa and Asia, and they're building great wealth. They're getting stronger economically and stronger militarily, and they're closing the frontier. There's no more of a safety valve in the American West because people keep settling, and there's nowhere else to go. So the United States needs new markets as they are rapidly industrializing, need more raw materials, which is why places like Alaska, who's rich in timber and oil, would be a great asset, a good addition to the United States. The U.S. also wants to spread Christianity and civilization. Like I had said, they have this desire to reform or civilize people that they see inferior to them, because at this point in history, the United States believes that they are superior culturally. We're going to see yellow journalism, which is interesting. Yellow journalism pretty much exaggerates the truth in the news to make people want to read it, right? Like a crazy headline. So we're going to see a lot of sensational newspaper articles that serve as propaganda. They try to evoke emotion or fear. We're going to see the Great White Fleet. This is the U.S. and how they built Steel Navy. Alfred T. Mahan. So we didn't look at Alfred T. Mahan yet. Alfred T. Mahan was a leader, and he was an admiral for the U.S. Navy, and he wanted the U.S. government officials to build up their naval power so that they could compete with other nations that are traveling around the globe by sea, acquiring different lands, acquiring different peoples. And so, as a result of Mahan's efforts, the U.S. decides to build 9 steel cruisers. And they created modern battleships like the Maine and Oregon. And pretty much the strengthening of the United States naval force is what really, really helped them achieve this status of a world power. Social Darwinism, the world belongs to the strong, right? You sink or you swim. And this was the justification for acquiring these overseas possessions because, it's the survival of the fittest. And if they can't survive, then, they're beat. Let's see what else. All right, so moving on to the Spanish-American War. Spanish-American War is significant because the U.S. goes to war to help Cuba win independence from Spain. So Cuba is owned by Spain. Cubans want their independence, so Americans go to war with Spain. So, and this is super important now because, this is super important now because the U.S. involvement in Latin America and Asia increases much more as a result of this war, even into today. So let's take a look. What caused the Spanish-American War? So Cuba's fighting for its independence. U.S. businesses have interest in trade in Cuba. There's $50 million invested and $100 million in trade each year. Cuba is only 90 miles south of Florida, right? So at first, wanted to buy Cuba from Spain. The Spanish responded saying they'd rather see Cuba get sunk in the ocean, right, rather than sell it to Spain. Sell it to the U.S. So when the Cubans rebelled against Spain, American sympathies went out to the Cuban people. The Cuban revolt wasn't successful. However, Cuban people did force Spain to abolish slavery. So they emancipated the slaves, and American capitalists began investing a lot of money in sugarcane plantations on the island. Oops. So this is where we start to see yellow journalism. Sensationalist newspaper articles of alleged Spanish atrocities, right? So we're going to see writers or journalists like Frederick Remington putting out articles that are highlighting and maybe dramatizing or exaggerating the maltreatment of the Cubans under Spanish rule. We had the Delone letter, which is another example of yellow journalism. This is a Spanish official that badmouths President McKinley. This gets leaked to the media, and they launch it and they release it, and so we're going to see backfire against that. At first, McKinley wanted to kind of work peacefully and avoid war with Spain. And at first it seemed to be working, but this letter was published, and when McKinley saw that he was, weak, being called weak and everything like that, tensions did rise. The USS Maine then explodes. So the USS Maine was sent to Havana Harbor to protect the U.S. citizens and their investments, but the ship explodes, and the Spanish are blamed for the death of 260 U.S. sailors. So now we're going to look at some of the major battles of the Spanish-American War. We have the Battle of Manila Bay in the Philippines, and the U.S. fleet was led by Admiral George Dewey. This is an overwhelming U.S. victory. Some famous quotes were, you may fire when ready and pull back for breakfast. So Dewey had the support of the Filipinos because they wanted freedom from Spain as well. So in a time frame of 2 months, 11,000 Americans joined forces with Filipino rebels. And at this point, there's so much support. The U.S. has so much support that they do eventually defeat Spain. Let's see. What else do you need to know? We have the Battle of San Juan Hill. There's also known as Kettle Hill. We know that Rough Riders is a term associated with Teddy Roosevelt. So the Rough Riders was the cavalry led by Teddy Roosevelt. He gave up his job as Secretary of State to help the war effort. And so this is the most famous land battle. While the units only played a major role in the second victory of San Juan Hill, this American troops invade Puerto Rico, and it kind of goes from there. So moving on, we see that it's a splendid little war. It only lasts 113 days. 5,400 American lives are lost, and 400 of these are combat deaths. However, 5,000 die of disease. The Treaty of Paris of 1898 ends the war, and we're going to see the following territorial gains from the treaty. So we get Cuba, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippine Islands. The Teller Amendment of 1898 says that the U.S. was only fighting to grant Cuba its independence. Cuba is forced to adopt the Platt Amendments, and this basically said that the U.S. could not interfere in Cuba whenever we wanted. So trying to advocate for a true independency. Independence is the noun. Wow. Okay. Anyways, the Filipino insurrection. So the U.S. did not grant the Philippines independence, and they end up fighting to kick the U.S. out of their country. let's take a look at where everything's at. Where's my pen? Okay, so this indicates American possession. So here's the U.S. Here we are. All right. We're over here. Here's the Guantanamo Naval Base of Cuba, right? Right here. We have Puerto Rico right here, the Virgin Islands. We have Alaska over here. Here are the Philippines, Guam. Okay. All of this purple belongs to the United States, and it's everywhere. And this is a benefit to us because, again, if you look up here, we own this land and we can be here, right? So we're allowed to go over here, or not that we're allowed to, but we can access a trade route that way. These little islands also serve as major geographical advantages for us, right? Because they serve as, naval bases, military bases, and also trade routes. It just strengthens us militarily because it provides geography in different areas of the world. Let's erase that. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna end there. You guys have 2 worksheets to complete. Please do the textbook readings and submit that worksheet. You will have a quiz on last chapter due on Wednesday. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to only make 1 quiz this time, as last time I kind of messed up, as many of you pointed out. Thank you for that. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Shoot me an email, and good luck.
Yeah.